Misfiring guns, an attacker who called himself Jesus, and a president who kept talking despite a bullet wound. From Andrew Jackson to Donald Trump, here are all the presidents who have survived it.
Throughout American history, presidents have faced numerous assassination attempts. Whether they're controversial figures like Trump or not, just being in the role of President of the United States makes them a target. It's almost like wearing a bullseye. But this time it was different. It wasn't a sitting president, it was Donald Trump, the former president who someone tried to stop from ever returning to the White House. On July 13, 2024, in Butler, Pennsylvania, a 20-year-old named Thomas Matthew Crooks attempted to assassinate Trump during a rally. Crooks took an elevated position on a rooftop and fired 7 shots.
Hold up, you're ready. So we gotta move to the bus. Watch out.
He was shot by a bullet that pierced the upper part of his...
One of those bullets hit Trump in the upper right ear. The pandemonium didn't end there. One rally attendee died and 2 others were critically injured before Crooks was taken down by the Secret Service. This shocking event has sparked a nationwide conversation about political violence and rally security. If you think about it, the lengths people will go to stop a political figure, even one not currently in office, is both terrifying and fascinating. It brings out questions like what drives someone like Crooks to carry out such an extreme act?
The FBI identified the gunman as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania.
After the shocking attempt on Trump's life, people started digging into Thomas Matthew Crooks' background, trying to understand what might have driven him to such an extreme act. Crooks hailed from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, a quiet suburb of Pittsburgh. He was known to his community as a bit of a loner. Neighbors described him as reserved and often keeping to himself. There were stories about his struggles with bullying during his school years, which might have contributed to his isolation.
From outside the secure cordoned area of the rally, atop an elevated structure.
Crooks' personal history paints a picture of a troubled young man. He wasn't known for any criminal behavior before this incident, but he had a reputation for being socially awkward. People who knew him said he had difficulty making friends and was often seen alone. Being isolated like that can seriously affect a person's mental state. There were no clear signs of radicalization or involvement in extremist groups, at least not that the initial investigations revealed. Crooks didn't have a significant online presence, which is unusual in today's digital age. This makes one wonder if he was influenced by something or someone online, or if he was just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. When we compare Crooks to other infamous shooters who have targeted presidents, some patterns emerge. Lee Harvey Oswald, who assassinated JFK, had a history of political activism and defection to the Soviet Union. John Hinckley Jr., who shot Ronald Reagan, was obsessed with actress Jodie Foster and suffered from severe mental illness. Then there's Charles J. Guiteau, who assassinated President Garfield, and he believed he was owed a political appointment. And don't forget about Leon Czolgosz, who killed President McKinley driven by his anarchist beliefs. Crooks doesn't fit neatly into these molds. He wasn't a political radical like Oswald or Czolgosz, nor did he have a publicized obsession or clear mental illness like Hinckley. His case seems to be more about personal pain and isolation. Right after the shooting, Trump didn't back down. Even though he was injured, he stood up, pumped his fist in the air, and mouthed "Fight" to his supporters. This defiant gesture became an iconic image that spread rapidly across media.
media platform, he wrote, quote, "I knew immediately that something was wrong and then I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping."
Trump took to social media to talk about this incident. "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening," wrote Trump on his social media platform Truth Social. He also thanked the Secret Service and law enforcement and expressed his condolences to the family of the rally-goer who was killed and the 2 critically injured. Melania Trump also shared her relief that her husband was safe and condemned the violence.
Milwaukee. Right now, plans are underway to expand the security perimeter around this.
Following the incident, Trump's campaign announced stricter security measures for future rallies, including more rigorous screenings and an increased presence of Secret Service agents. The reactions didn't stop there. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau added his voice when he said this: "I'm sickened by the shooting at former President Trump. It cannot be overstated. Political violence is never acceptable. My thoughts are with former President Trump, those at the event, and all Americans."
Adding that political violence in any form has no place in our society.
In his statement on Sunday, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer expressed his deep disgust over the incident. "Public sentiment and media coverage have been intense. Many Trump supporters believe this incident proves their belief that Trump is constantly under threat from political opponents."
My name is Thomas Matthew Crooks. I hate Republicans, I hate Trump, and guess what?
Meanwhile, online trolls are pretending to be crooks and making light of the situation.
What we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime.
So let's talk about what's happening with the investigation into the assassination attempt on Trump. The FBI and local law enforcement are looking deep into Thomas Matthew Crooks' background, trying to piece together the puzzle of what led him to this drastic action. They're combing through his digital footprint, interviewing people who knew him, and looking into his past to uncover any potential influences or motives.
Currently have an identified motive, although our investigators are working tirelessly to attempt to identify.
One key focus is on his online activities. The FBI is checking all his social media accounts, messages, and any online forums he might have visited. They're trying to see if he was part of any extremist groups or if he had been radicalized in any way. It's important to figure out whether he acted alone or if there's a network that might pose further threats. So far, what they found points to Crooks being a very isolated individual. There's no solid evidence yet of any direct connections to any known extremist groups. However, his history of being bullied and socially isolated is a significant red flag. They're looking into whether these potential issues might have made him vulnerable to harmful influences. In response to this incident, security protocols for presidential candidates are being beefed up. The Secret Service are also looking at using more advanced technology to detect these threats earlier. It's all about making sure something like this doesn't happen again. Alright, let's talk about some of the other various attempts to take out Donald Trump. This isn't the first time someone has thought it was a good idea to try and remove him from the picture. Here's a rundown of the 4 major attempts. First up, we have the Las Vegas incident in June 2016. Michael Stephen Sanford, a British guy, decided he was going to be a hero. He went to a Trump rally and tried to grab a police officer's gun to shoot Trump. Talk about ambitious and delusional. The Secret Service quickly nabbed him and he was sentenced to a year in prison before being deported back to the UK. Then we move to September 2017 in North Dakota. Gregory Lee Lingang thought he'd use a forklift to flip Trump's limousine. Yes, you heard that right, a forklift. During a presidential visit, he stole the forklift from an oil refinery and tried to ram it into the motorcade. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for everyone else, the forklift got stuck and he was arrested. He admitted his crazy plan and ended up with a 20-year prison sentence. I guess he didn't quite think that one through.
The FBI arrested a former U.S. Navy sailor today in Logan, Utah. William Clyde Allen is suspected of mailing suspicious envelopes to the president.
Next, we have the October 2018 ricin letters. William Clyde Allen III, a Navy veteran, sent letters laced with ricin to Trump and the Pentagon. Luckily, all the letters were intercepted before they could do any harm. Allen was charged with mailing threats and other related crimes. He pleaded not guilty, but the evidence was pretty damning.
Pascal Ferrier, the Canadian woman charged with mailing a letter laced with a deadly toxin to the American
clown, saying he ruins the United States. It tells him to give up and remove your application for this election.
Finally, there's the September 2020 ricin letter from Pascal Cécile Véronique Ferrier, a Canadian woman. She sent a letter containing ricin to Trump, calling him an ugly tyrant clown and telling him to drop out of the election.
Was wanted by the FBI for the ricin letters. It says she was in possession of a loaded firearm in her belt.
The letter was intercepted and Ferrier was arrested at the border trying to enter the U.S. with a gun. She was sentenced to nearly 22 years in prison. It's a wild world out there, and with all these assassination attempts, it's clear that the stakes are high when it comes to political figures like Trump. We don't know what the future holds for him, but let's hope he stays safe and healthy enough to participate in this upcoming election. Ultimately, it's up to the American people to decide who their next president will be. Stay tuned and stay informed.